Good morning. It is 9 a.m. and I'll call to order the Board of Directors Special Meeting Workshop for Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. May I have a roll call, please?
Director Meyerhoffen,
Here.
Director Duff, Director Martin,
Here.
Vice President Griffith, President Sewell.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
And both Director Duff and Vice President Griffith have let us know they're under the weather and are excused. No one will be participating remotely, so we'll skip item 3 and move on to item 4, public input. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on matters within the board's jurisdiction. Please limit the comments to 3 minutes or less. State law prohibits the board from discussing or taking action on any item not listed on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address the board?
President Sewell, we do not.
Thank you. Items for discussion. Item 5, award of contract to Borden Excavating Incorporated for GQPP Assessment District 18 Area D3 Sewer Construction and Waterline Replacement Project and Capital Budget Augmentation. It is recommended that the general manager be authorized to award a contract for the GQPP Assessment District 18 Area D3 Sewer Construction and Waterline Replacement Project. The lowest responsible bidder, Borden Excavating Incorporated, in the amount of $5,252,252 plus a 10% contingency. Augment the capital improvement budget to $1,820,622.20 for job number 11876 and to do all things necessary to complete the project, including but not limited to preparation and filing of a notice of exemption to comply with CEQA requirements. General Manager?
Thank you, General Manager. Excuse me. Thank you, President Sewell. This item was brought to the board in several different times. One was a workshop. The second one was the last board meeting, and this is the third time as a workshop and potentially fourth when we take it to the board, if we decide to take it to the board next week. When we brought this to you as a workshop item, we were first concerned that
The echo.
yeah, I think we've got it. That the project would not be able to meet the matching funds or the 50-50 contribution. The assessment district technically comes up with 50%, which the property owners, and then the other 50% would be grant funding. When we were working through this, we realized that the cost of inflation and everything last couple of years, based when this assessment district was originally passed, we may not be able to meet that requirement. Bids came in even higher than we expected. At our last board meeting, staff presented a scenario where the project would move forward, but the district would have to contribute additional funds. While it's been done in the past, it's been a relatively small amount, and by small amount, like around $100,000 or less, for a project of the size of about 400 lots. In this particular case, it's only 100 lots, and the offset was much greater than that, almost $800,000 under one of the scenarios we presented to the board. The board asked us the following questions for further discussion. Can the grant funding be repurposed? As you recall, there's one grant for 78,000, another one over 800,000. And then the other question was, how much would it cost to go back to the area to increase the assessment district or the property owner's contribution to make sure that it's still the 50-50 split we've always looked for? So from that perspective, we are ready to answer those questions. Engineering Manager Eric Weck would take the first set of questions, which is, how can we repurpose those grants? And remember, this is a workshop, so it's open to any questions. It's not as formal as a board meeting, so feel free to interrupt at any time.
I apologize, Eric. What is the name of the file? So try that one first. Okay.
Good morning.
Hold on, Kurt. The monitor behind you does not have the presentation out. It doesn't have. Oh, okay. Sorry.
While he's bringing that up. So there's two grants that were earmarked for the D3 project. There was a $78,000 grant that was originally part of the M2 project, and then since we got that project fully or funded by the state, the $78,000 was moved over to D3. And I believe that money can be repurposed to reimburse the district for some lysimeters that were purchased. And that was for the nitrogen control study. And I have Steve Ledbetter here as well to provide additional details on these grants as he's deep in the weeds on those. The second grant is Prop 1, Round 2. That was $875,000. And we've been communicating back and forth between myself and Steve to see about repurposing that money in case the board elects not to proceed with the D3 project. And so that $875,000 could potentially be moved over to M2 to cover some of the costs for the district as well. So I talked about the repurposing of the 875 as well as potentially using the $78,000 for the nitrogen control study. So that answers some of those questions. Does the board have anything else?
The 78, that was the one that expires this month,
Yes, sir.
and we could get that in time for what you mentioned to not lose out on that.
We're looking at that, and it looks like we might be able to make that work. We're reaching out to the state and to make sure if we can repurpose that, slide that money over to purchase to cover the cost of these lysimeters.
But to do so, would we need to make a decision on this item this month?
Yes.
Actually, staff, if this was to be continued into April, why the bid would still be valid, with us potentially losing this, we would automatically, with board direction, then move to then take this to go a different direction. There's a couple of different things. This is an implementation grant, which means you have to actually build something or pay for something. Now, in our world, we've paid for a study, about $150,000 for a nitrogen study at the Horton plant that basically resulted in us running the aeration, two of the aeration ditches differently, and reduced the nitrogen contribution that was coming out of those into the ponds from a 15 to a 5, as I recall. So we see the benefit and the cost, and that meets the criteria. The lysimeters were part of that study. So we feel that we have a very good reasoning to getting these lysimeters paid for from that perspective, and then using those grant funds for that. It's just the state doesn't like to make those decisions very quickly. So that's why we're sort of hesitant in saying, yes, it can be, but we hope that it will be. And if we pivot on that, let's say in the next couple of days, which we're going to have to before after Monday's board meeting, hopefully we'll be able to get the state to say yes, and then we'll be able to move forward and get that reimbursed through that particular avenue, if you will.
One, I think even just trying to get that money utilized is better than just letting it die.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we would do.
Did you have something?
Yes, it's a good question there, President Swell. Lytimeter, can you explain briefly how that lytimeter works so we know what we're...
Lysimeter? Yes. Steve, can you?
You're looking sharp today, Steve.
So good afternoon, President Sewell and members of the board. Director Meyerhoffen, the lysimeters are installed at about 10 to 12 feet deep below the bottom of the infiltration basin. And it's just a well that it allows the collection of a water sample at a specific elevation, about 10 or 12 feet below the ground surface in the aquifer. And what we're testing right now is we've made operational changes at Horton to try to reduce that nitrogen. Now we're trying to see, does that nitrogen level also reduce as the groundwater works its way through the aquifer? So we're trying to collect samples once when it comes out of the tailpipe of the treatment plant, and once after it percolates 10 feet, 12 feet down into the ground surface to see if we're getting any additional attenuation for nitrogen. So we can use that as part of our compliance requirements with the state as part of the waste discharge permit for the Horton plant.
Thank you for that brief explanation. Now we have a general idea of what it is and how it's being used. Thank you.
It is a two-phase process. Right now, they've only installed the shallow lysimeters, and there's planning to install deep lysimeters in the future. But right now, between the study and because it had an implementation component, is General Manager Macy mentioned, we feel that we can get that money repurposed because it did have, again, an implementation component. There was something physically constructed, and it meets the benefit that was in the original grant that said we'd have a nitrogen reduction as part of the project.
And you say it goes, what, 10 to 12 feet down?
Yes.
Is that hole or that access already there?
Yeah, they installed a shallow well, basically. Yeah.
So they're just
Yeah.
dig a new hole with a shallow well.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
As for the 875,000, when does that grant go away?
That grant, the money needs to be spent by December of 26. So we have until the end of next year to spend that funding.
And you mentioned possibly using it towards M2.
Yeah, the benefits of that project are, again, nitrogen reduction via septic abatement. So that's a perfect match with M2. So we shouldn't have any issues moving that money over. Our program manager's been on vacation since we were trying to get ready for this presentation, but we've done the same switch before from M2 to D3. Now this is a different round, but we can move that money back over.
And this would be outside of what the state's already reimbursing us through the.
Correct. Based on just the cost of construction and inflation since the original budgets were set for the grant, we know that we're going to need to be spending more money than the roughly 10 million we have remaining in the State Water Resource Control Board grant for the regional program. So we have about 10 million set aside to do M2 septic to sewer. That includes the on-site abatements. So now the cost that we feel to complete that, we'd have no problem also spending the $875,000 M2 grant with another 875 in local match from the assessment district to help make that project go.
Okay. And then probably a question more for staff. Just so we're ready to hopefully make a decision this month. I mean, I think we have all the data, but is staff and you, Steve, able to answer questions for Robert and Amber? Should they?
Yes, with the board makeup today, it's not on the agenda for March because we wanted to see how the workshop and what direction we received. However, we will be placing it on Monday's board agenda, so we will be able to have this conversation with the other two board members present.
Okay. And then just could you give kind of like a hypothetical of if we don't move forward with D3, what's the next step for that area, for those 100 homes? As far as we've kind of told them that we're trying to get them septic abated and everything. And
So there's a variety of different avenues. All of them are going back to the 50-50, trying to find as much grant funding as we can. We are hopefully in line to get some federal funding through the core. This project may be able to be moved over to the core program and get taken care of relatively quickly. Right now, we are going through the process of the money that we have secured, going to update all the plans, doing all the CEQA documents and NEPA documents required by the federal government. Once that that will take us almost through the money we have to date. And then if we're able to secure more funding, then that funding would be able to then be used directly to D2 as well as other areas.
and they would still be, I'm assuming they're basically our highest priority right now as far as in line, just because that assessment district will sunset. Or
This checked a lot of boxes. I don't know if it's the higher end priority. I apologize.
okay.
I don't have that, but it is.
Yeah, J2 and D3 are our two higher priorities. They were already partially completed based on that priority list, so we're just trying to finish them out. So it would be at the front of the line for funding.
And do we know, I think I asked it, but I forgot, when that assessment district does sunset?
Be at the end of November of 2029 it would be 10 years.
I think that's all I have.
I just don't want to go too far in debt. Put too much of a responsibility on that district itself. So if we can get all the grant money and hook these people up, and I think it's very important that we don't burden our parcel owners either at the same time with this, to where they will have financial difficulties in the future.
Thank you. Item 6, water and sewer master plan update. General Manager.
Thank you, President Sewell. Eric Luck will be giving this presentation. Eric? Yeah.
Thank you, General Manager Macy. Good morning, President Sewell, members of the board. So, um, so this morning we're going to be talking about two major plans, the water and sewer master plan. You may have remember that we brought this to the board last February. And since that time, staff and our consultants have spent a lot of calories in uh, trying to dive down and get into the numbers. What you have in front of you is should be a hard copy of the proposed CIP spanning 20 years, going from 2025 through 2055. And so each one of those spreadsheets covers a 5-year period. And we'll get into those at the end of each section. So this first section here is going to be the water master plan. You all probably remember a lot of the front end stuff that we talked about. So in the interest of brevity, I'd like to kind of quickly go through it. So what is it? What is a master plan and why is it important? Well, it identifies the need to, it identifies what we need to do in terms of capital improvements. It also identifies when we need to do it. And finally, the master plans identify how much money is going to be spent for those projects. So in order to get a current master plan put together, we use previous work from other master plans as well as information from developers that when they come in, they tell us what their proposed developments would be. And it looks, and those master plans look at projected population growth. Existing facility assessments are also performed to confirm the conditions of those facilities like wells and motors, as well as reviewing daily site visit logs that staff does on a daily basis, as well as inspection reports. And likewise, well performance such as electrical usage and SCADA information are used to get an idea as to how well the pump and the motor are performing and may identify a need to have them replaced or at least maintained. So looking ahead, we keep our ear to the ground for upcoming requirements and law changes to stay ahead of mandated policies such as lead and copper and chromium-6, etc. So the master plan helps develop a capital improvement program that addresses previously mentioned items, previously mentioned items, knowing which projects are in the near future versus ones that can be pushed further out into the financial plan, and it directs our energies towards seeking sources for outside funding. Finally, a master plan helps identify the scheduling strategy to complete capital improvements. Typically, previous work is looked at as a jumping off point for developing a master plan. For instance, the Northeast update, which was completed in 2008, this update was not contemplated in 2007 when the original master plan was done, as it was driven by private development. So 1 year after completing that master plan in 2007, the developer reached out to the district to discuss private development just west of Worsley, north of Pearson. And General Manager Macy alluded to this last year where, and I'll get into this in a second, where we projected our population growth. There is interest to developing properties that are kind of moving up the hills. So this development here, the Northwest update discussed, that's towards the northwest portion of the district, and they're slowly moving up the hills. Let's see. Another potentially significant development at this time was from the County of Riverside, and they contemplated placing a detention center in the Whitewater area. Again, significant developments are completed, are contemplated in the master plan, and they need to be updated as these significant developments come in. Let's get into population growth. The difference between this slide and last year's is that I was able to add in a bar graph that visually show the connections as well as the population growth. And you'll see that there was a significant amount of conservation efforts that were done along around between 2005 to 2015, where the consumption decreased from 10 MGD down to 6.7. And those conservation efforts were brought about by a drought. And since then, population has increased, which has also driven up consumption MGDs.
Real quick, Eric,
Yes,
could
sir.
you, 2025 showed 16,000. We're not at 16,000 though, right? Connections?
These were projected.
Okay.
These are projected. The last several years data should be actual. And since we're kind of fresh into 2025, these are just projected values.
Okay, thank you.
I'm really impressed with the figures on the population growth. I knew it was up, but I didn't realize it was up that much. It's quite a jump.
Director Martin, can you please use your mic?
Sorry, I was just commenting on the population growth. Seems, I knew it had, over the last few years had gone up, but I didn't realize it had gone up that much. Interesting info.
I have a question. Highway 62, what keeps, I want to ask you a question, but I'll just come out and say, Highway 62, there's no development going on up there. The reason why? Water pressure? So in the master plan on Worsley Road, how can, I know it's quite a taking to get the water pressure up there. General Manager Macy and I spoke about this before, about coming all the way down, what was that, Indian, and then back down Worsley Road or something. And so the water pressure, no matter what we do, how much, I think we need to have that in our master plan, that we are looking at the water pressure in case somebody wants to build a hotel or something out there, that at least we're moving towards that goal of getting the proper pressure to the developers.
I think if you look at our first 5 years, there is a design for this 1700 zone, which would provide additional water in the higher elevations in some aspects. But again, most of our new infrastructure, if not all of our new infrastructure, is driven by developers. We do not extend service to developments. We simply work with developers to make sure we have the existing infrastructure, and currently we have that. So when you look at when we get to that slide, you'll see that there's a 1700 zone that has a reservoir, has a booster station. Those are covered by developer costs. So you'll see those coming up.
Are there any other questions?
Since you asked, that developer cost, how much would that be to the first developer out there? Bring that all the way around like we were talking, a couple million, probably what, 5-10 million?
It shows 2 million on the new 1700 reservoir, but
Yeah, but I'm talking about,
So one of the things that's being developed or being discussed with the city right now is a CFD to build out some improvements around the Skyborn property. I believe based on the amendment, or excuse me, agreement that we had with Skyborn, the cost for somewhere, and this was back in 2004, 2006, was around $8 million, as Danny and I looked at it the other day. I don't know what that's going to be when we start talking about a CFD and what those costs are today, but we do have them estimated in the uh, in the uh, in the CIP. We have 2.5 million for a booster station. We have 3.3 million for a new reservoir, and that's just the first phase that we'd expect in the first 5 years. So at that point, then you start talking about going up even in higher elevations and things of that nature and additional costs. So based on the agreement that we had with the Skyborn development years ago, it was about $8 million to get in this new zone.
You know, we're getting closer to the freeway. That sure helps. But when a developer has to come up with that kind of money, it's gonna be a long time coming. And I would like to see the district and the city get together to figure out how we can get grant money or whatever it's gonna take to get that water pressure out there so that we can have proper development out there. And it's good for the city, it's good for us, it's good for our citizens and people traveling down Highway 62. So, thank you.
General Manager Macy, you've said something in the past that's kind of stuck with me, and that phrase was, "If you build it, they will come." So, if a developer, and correct me if I'm wrong, if a developer comes in and invests money in putting in infrastructure, I believe there's a 10-year
There's a
development
developer
agreement.
reimbursement agreement that a developer can enter into where some of those costs are spread across some of the other development that comes in into that same time window. And that's something that is pretty commonplace when a developer puts a lot of money up front and out there. But of course, in this particular case, it's specific almost to the Skyborn, but there will be added benefits. And there's also, as we were talking about going up into the northwest area, there's other developments that were contemplated on the west side of 62 that would also contribute to some of these improvements. So there is a staggered approach based on the development cycles that may happen, but of course the economy has to continue to improve. And that's what happened when Skyborn had some struggles after the 2000 bust, if you will.
I understand all that, but in this case, it's hard to get a developer to come up with $8 million in order to develop a $2 million piece of property. So whatever we can do to rectify that problem that we're having here with the cash and getting it out there with the city and the district and maybe the state or whoever else. That's what I'm looking to do, is just to get around all that so that the developer doesn't have to come up with $8 million right up front.
We consistently work with the city and try to get development dollars and working with them, whether it, as well as CFDs. There's a lot of different levers that the city and Mission Springs Water District can pull to try to help development come in. However, we cannot spend ratepayer money to extend water and sewer to areas that aren't our existing customers.
General Manager Macy, I understand that. And as a former planning commissioner for the city, I understand both sides of the fence on this. I understand you're working together with the city, but we need to find another solution as to how we can get that pressure out there so we can start developing out there. I understand that this isn't the planning commission or the city or whatever. What I'm saying is I'd like to see something different happen to make it happen so we can have development out there. And we are the water district, the city is the city, and it's the city and the water district that needs to figure out how to get it out there. Expecting the developer to come up with $8 million to develop a $2 or $3 million piece of property is just not going to happen.
I just want to point out that with the expanded development at Skyborn, we must be doing something right. Because they've really expanded it into quite a project out there, and so
I think their success will hopefully drive others to be willing to come and invest.
Sure.
Just my ignorance, is there any situation in California where a water district similar to us has ever built infrastructure in advance of, I mean, just getting to,
I believe it's state law that prohibits us from using ratepayer money. Proposition 218 prohibits us from using ratepayer money to fund developer projects.
And we need to find it somewhere else.
Go ahead. Eric.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So for the district to provide service from the aquifer to the tap for our customers, there's four main components that the master plan looks at. And so those components are water mains, wells, booster stations, and reservoirs. In all of those cases, age and condition is a factor, as well as material and location for water mains and pumping capacity for wells, as well as regulatory compliance. Likewise, there's nothing in this industry is without regulations or compliance obligations, and that's neither a static or unchanging either. So let's go over. Yes. So staff has organized the different types of pipes. So that's one of the categories. In terms of material and total length installed, as well as the expected service life for each of these materials. So one thing that's noted is that the district was initially a water district. I'll go over to here. Yep. It was initially a water district, and we've been providing a water service for 70 years. So given that water lines were the first improvements to be constructed by the district starting about 70 years ago, it makes sense that this master plan study period identifies water lines in the front end to be upgraded. Typically, water lines have a service life of about 70 years. So we've been a district for 70 years. Things are coming together. So what's interesting is once that we get to the wastewater master plan, is that you'll see that the service life for wastewater, the clay pipes, is about 100 years. So the replacement costs and the maintenance costs for those are a little bit further out in the future. In terms of addressing water lines in rear yard easements, staff has been actively working on that as we've incorporated the abandonment of water lines and rear yard easements for the Area M2 project, as well as the D3 project that we just discussed. General Manager Macy mentioned in the past that there are about 16 miles of rear yard easements that need to be addressed, and that project is in the handout that I handed out earlier to you. It's about $30 million to do that work, and we'll be doing that work over about 20 or 30 years. I think it's about 20 years. You'll see towards the end of the presentation that addressing water lines and rear yard easements has a significant effect that will span, like I said, 20 years. Staff has already identified these areas and have prioritized them. However, as improvement projects come up, some of those, if we're in the area, we'll take care of those water lines. So we'll adjust those priorities as necessary. So the second component is wells. Again, in looking at our assets, the age and condition comes into play when looking at our water production wells. Pumping capacity as well as regulatory compliance also is a concern that we look at. The proposed CIP listing is broken up in five-year chunks that you have, and seeks to address well rehabilitation as well as other types of infrastructure improvements. As of now, we have adequate pumping capacity at around 20 million gallons per day. The state requires us, I believe, this was mentioned last year, 2.25 times the amount of pumping capacity from what we need, which will allow wells to be taking to be taken out of service for maintenance. And we have plenty of capacity for now and well into the future. The district has completed a rehabilitation project just recently of well 34 that's located in the Skyborn development area. Likewise, well 42, the well 42 rehabilitation project is progressing, as well as the nearby well 22 above ground improvements, which is partially grant funded. Currently, there are 16 wells that provide service to the district. And before I move off this slide, this just shows our water wells, as well as when they were built and when they were last rehabbed. Booster stations, same thing. This is just a listing of our booster stations, what zone they provide service to, and when they were built. Again, these are reservoirs. We look at them in terms of age and condition and perform a visual inspection. And this slide just lists all of the reservoirs that we have in service, the zone that they provide service to, as well as when they were constructed. So now that we're getting into the CIP listing, so you should see 5 Excel spreadsheets for water improvement projects. And we've also asked our consultant to provide some information in terms of which ones are developer funded. So for the first 5 years from 2025 to 2030, we anticipate over $21 million worth of work to be done over 5 years. What's interesting here is from 2030 to 2035, we expect that about $5 million worth of developer funded work will be done. Again, this is all water related. We haven't gotten to the sewer portion yet. For 2035 to 2045, we anticipate about $6 million worth of developer funded projects to be constructed, and then about $28 million worth of work over 5 years between 35 and 2045. Between 2040 and 2045, we anticipate about $20 million worth of work to be spread out over 5 years. And finally, this is the final 5-year period for capital improvements. Now, these are just the CIP list. Where staff is finalizing and working with our consultant to actually complete the document that goes into water quality, goes into history, things like that for the water master plan. Are there any questions so far?
I guess one that I have is it just seems like over each 5 years, it's almost like it's going down. Do you feel that's just deferred maintenance and we'll be starting to get on top of things more, that we're anticipating less each 5-year period? Or is that more of kind of leaving some wiggle room open for other projects that might come up? And I know a big one this first 5 years is that chromium treatment, but
Yes, the chromium treatment is pretty big. I believe it's about $25 million worth of work. And in remembering from what was said last year, I think it's about $5 million per well. And we're anticipating doing 5 wells, I believe. I have that right here. I can't answer that question about whether or not deferred maintenance. I'll need to think about that.
The answer to your question is there are a lot of things that we're doing now in the next 5 to 10 years. For example, Terrace Reservoir, for example, when we bid that just before COVID, that was to be done 5 years ago, if you will. But that has now been pushed forward to this particular time. We only do those terrace reservoirs, once every 20 years. So once we do that, that should extend their longevity. The reason that we're sort of holding on to them right now is because we're hoping to get a Cal OES grant to help us fund about 5 million of that $8 million project. So some of the projects do have reasons for being delayed. They cost too much, or we have potential funding coming. But yes, a lot of the stuff that we're doing right now, for example, we were doing a rehabilitation prioritization project. As we started down that path, all our wells started failing. We've had to start going through there and rehabilitating our wells. So yes, after we rehab these wells, we shouldn't have to go back and do them on such a consistent basis. But it has been exactly what you said. A lot of um, kicking the can down the road in the past and not being we were being reactive instead of proactive. Well 28 and well 32 wells that still may have some useful life in them, we simply turned them off when they started to have some mechanical issues. We now have the resources, and frankly, because of Chrome 6 and some of the development going on in the Northwest Corridor, we need those wells to come back online, and that's why they've been added back to our CIP to do some rehab for those two particular wells. So if we are able to rehab those, you think about a well costs about $4 million to $5 million to drill and equip. If we can rehab those wells for, I think we estimated $800,000 in our CIP, it will save us about $4 million a well and provide us with additional well capacity into the future. So your question that you asked, the answer is yes. We're going to start being more proactive instead of reactive, which should reduce our costs moving forward.
Okay. I guess part of my question was kind of, I'm assuming all of this is going to be a big part of our financial master plan.
Absolutely.
I'd almost rather those further out 5 years get a little bit bigger of a expected budget just to better plan from financial master plan.
So actually the way this process works, we're going to bring you the master plan as a workshop, both sewer and water. And then based on any feedback that we receive, we'll be actually bringing you the final plan in April. In April, we'll be hopefully bringing you the long-range financial plan. The long-range financial plan will look at our capital improvement projects and depending on where our revenues and expenses are from an operations perspective and how much we want to spend from a capital perspective, they may do exactly that. They may suggest that maybe you want to move some of those projects out farther to lessen the burden because you can't pay for them. When you were looking some of those numbers, Chrome 6, for example, is $25 million on its own. We don't have necessarily $25 million over the next 5 years to pay for that. We do have reserves. We did collect money in our last rate adjustment to take care of that. But we also, since we didn't have a Chrome 6 issue, we then pivoted and started improving all of our wells and our system and some of our other improvements that were necessary that we weren't doing at that particular time. So the money that we went out to, we just pivoted and used it for other things. We have the flexibility to move around our capital projects. We will do that when we start looking at the long-range financial plan to lessen the impact to any existing ratepayers or even future ratepayers from that perspective. So that's sort of how we staged bringing it to you.
Mm-hmm.
The master plans first, then the long-range master plan or long-range financial plan second. So you'll see the first draft, if you will, of the long-range financial plan at our April workshop.
I have a question on if you've already stated this, I'm sorry, I missed it, but how often do we test wells for chromium 6?
We were doing it as required every 3 years. And then, of course, when the regulation came out, that frequency changed. That frequency has changed again now that the MCL is out there. We test them, but we do not necessarily test for a compliance testing because we don't want to trigger certain timelines that our consultant talked about triggering and when we would have to be compliant, if you will. We decided to shut off the wells that were over 10 parts per billion. So right now we are not putting any Chrome 6, any well water over 10 parts per billion into the system. We have effectively shut those wells down as we're working with our consultant to bring those wells into compliance. It was a policy decision with the board's assistance that we decided that we did not want to serve any Chrome 6 high chrome 6 water. So we turn those wells off as we go through a compliance plan.
I understand that, but you have to have tested the wells in order to determine that they were exceeded the legal limit. And I'm just wondering how often or jurisdiction-wide we're testing wells for chromium-6 contamination.
Monthly.
Monthly.
Currently, we're testing them monthly.
Perfect, thank you.
Erica, do you want to pivot now to the sanitary or the sewer master plan?
Okay. So now we're switching over to the sewer master plan 2025 update. These next few slides we just talked about. This slide is interesting in terms of here in terms of the population growth. Looking at 2025, it shows a sanitary flow of 2.3 million gallons a day, which comes close to the Horton plant capacity. It's a good thing that we have the new Wright plant up and running. So as you take the total capacity from Horton plant and the regional, that takes us about to 2035. And I believe General Manager Macy mentioned this last year, where in 2035, we're getting close and this is just something we may want to keep in our minds for 2035 to potentially expand it to MBRs.
Correct. Currently, we have sequential batch reactors, but yes, we want to go to membranes and basically double the capacity in the existing footprint.
Okay. So sewer mains, lift stations, and treatment facilities make up our wastewater system. As with the water, age, condition, and location and long-term performance are factors that affect the wastewater system. So when we're talking about the age of our infrastructure, we started out, like I said earlier, as a water district, and we've been providing sewer service since the 1970s. And let's see. And this slide shows the difference of 20 years versus the health of the pipe life. And this graphic shows that why we don't see a lot of improvements in sewer mains, because vitrified clay pipe typically has a service life of 100 years. So, but recently, and what our near term and near to medium term improvements, they will focus on septic to sewer conversion projects. In terms of lift stations, we currently have one lift station, the Dos Palmas lift station, and it was constructed in 1987, and it's instrumental in taking flows of about 1 MGD from the Horton plant and directing them to the new Wright regional plant, allowing for needed maintenance of the Horton treatment facility. Now, since last year, I've decided to add in the Amazon lift station. The Amazon development was conditioned to construct a lift station down there off of 20th Avenue, and that is a developer-funded project, and it includes the $7.18 million. This is based on their estimate that they've provided us. That $7.18 million also includes the conveyance line from the lift station directing flows to our regional facility, and the capacity is about 1.64 million gallons a day. Any questions so far?
Is that the future I-10 lift station on that first spreadsheet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything?
And so the money Amazon's putting out, they'll get part of that back with future growth, is what you're saying?
I'm not sure if they've entered into a reimbursement agreement with the district yet.
Well, they're worth about 1.5 trillion, so it's not a burden for them, that's for sure. Um, But they haven't entered into any agreement with
No.
the district as far as reimbursement, or are they supposed to, or
It's their choice.
their choice?
If they want to enter into one, I believe we've mentioned it to them in the past. And it's their choice if they want to enter into it. Then we would, go through the paperwork and present it to the board, and then the board would need to approve it.
Oh, maybe they need a write-off. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So in terms of the treatment facilities that we have three of them. The Horton Treatment Plant was constructed in 1973, and the recent improvements to the plant include the installation of an odor control system. And based on the results of an ongoing nitrogen study, VFD drives and anoxic mixers may be installed. The odor control system is at the influent headworks as wastewater enters the facility. Secondly, influent chopper pumps were installed in May of 2022. And finally, for the Horton treatment plant, tertiary filters have been designed, and they're on the shelf, and they're designed to accommodate future recycled water use, um, to be able to provide that to, say, there's a nearby school as well as the park site. The anoxic paddles will be looked at after the nitrogen control study is completed. And based on the results of the nitrogen control study, the future of the Desert Crest treatment facility is unknown, although I believe in last year's workshop there was talk of directing flows down to the Los Dos Palmas, which will then transfer those flows from the Desert Crest to the regional plant. Finally, the Wright treatment facility has been receiving wastewater and over the past few weeks, and is currently in the commissioning process. So what you have in your handout there is the section for wastewater capital improvement projects that span 20 years from 2025 to 2045. Of note, between 2025 and 2035, there's about $9 million worth of developer-funded improvements that are proposed. About $9.8 million between 2030 and 2035 to be spread out over 5 years, and these capital improvements would be performed by staff. We would advertise and then get them constructed, I mean. This is the 2035, 2040 span of time.
And Eric, this is the possibility, or the one of the Desert Crest lift station possibly decommissioning that plant and just sending the flows to the right.
I believe that is CIP 17.
And then it looks like, well, I don't know if it is, but the Long Canyon or the CIP 13 just above that, would that also be part of that line?
I think, what is it, 22, CIP 22 and CIP 17 are both linked up,
Okay,
and 18 as well.
thank you.
For the 2040 timeframe, is about almost $2 million worth of developer funded improvements. And finally, from 2040 to 2045, about $4 million worth of capital improvements for sewer would be contemplated. So, as General Manager Macy mentioned earlier, the purpose of this workshop is to reacquaint everybody on the CIPs for water and sewer and the master plan. In April, the Board of Directors will be presented the water and sewer master plan and we'll hopefully adopt them. And then which will dovetail into the financial plan that's planned on going in May of this year, ahead of the new fiscal budget period for 25-26.
Question?
The Desert Crest plant. We want to put it on a pump station down Dillon Road, but how much is that going to cost and how far out are we looking at?
It's in that 2035 sheet.
Yeah. I didn't bring my glasses.
So demolitions at 100,000, lift stations at 17 million.
And 17 million for the lift station. Does that include the sewer line going down Dillon Road? Or is that just for the actual station itself?
It's the lift station and the force main.
I'm sorry, I misspoke on that. I read the wrong.
Sorry. Gets confusing.
Any of these a piece of paper?
Yeah. Or highlighter. Different colors of highlighters.
Okay, so CIP 22 and CIP 18 are together. CIP 17 is to get the flows to the regional plant.
But it's part of a larger upgrade that's not just from Desert Crest.
Oh, okay, so it's encompassing other things as well.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
About 3.2. Not 17.
So
Thank you, Steve.
I think it's important that we do put a lift station in there on Dillon so that for future development. But did you say $100,000 to
Demolish?
demolish the Desert Crest and then hooking it all up? That seems like a long-term project down the road for that kind of dough. Right? Maybe it's not.
It's in the 2035.
Yeah.
It's 10 years out.
10 years.
But I don't know, even in 10 years, what's going to be going on down there? Probably nothing. It's in the plan, and I think it's a good idea to have it in the plan for 10 years and something to look at for the next board to deal with. Because it'll be 10 years and I don't know if I'll be here. You probably won't. This guy probably. He's not blind.
I'd be lucky if I lived that long.
You don't need to go anywhere.
Anything further? I think my only thing was just seeing the graphs of our connections and our population increasing. Some of these last 5 years or last 10 years of these plans, I'd maybe like to see more of a wish list of things that just to have that number higher for the financial plan, the better plan. But overall, thank you. Anything further from staff for item 6?
No, not at this time. Thank you, President.
Item 7, strategic plan update. Is this Assistant General Manager?
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me this time. I just wanted to give everybody a quick update of where we're at with our strategic plan. We did adopt it 1 year ago. It went by very, very quickly, but we are approaching the 1 year anniversary. As you remember, our strategic plan provides guidance for the next 3 to 5 years for the organization. And we really use it as a guide for district staff and operations so that we can prioritize the things that are important to our board. It is based, and there is a presentation there, Kurt, in the share drive that you should be able to find. It is based on 7 key SMART goals, and those goals are customer communications, water supply, financial management, system reliability, environmental sustainability, improved technology and processes, and workforce excellence. So today, I just want to go over a few of some of the progress that we've made in each of these goals. And this is a tracking sheet that I've given you guys printouts of, but this is a digital tracking sheet that we have on our intranet on the hub. So it's available to all staff, and it's also available to board or anyone internally that would like to look at it at any time. Next slide, please. So SMART goal number 1 is our customer communications. And I pulled out some of the key success measures that things that we've accomplished in the last year. There's more detail in the printout that I gave you. But some of the big ones, you know, we've got a 12-month communications plan that April works through when she's putting together her materials for paid social and for newsletter stories. We've got our Because Water Quality Matters campaign. You'll remember that we talked about with the Chrome 6 MCL changing. We wanted to make sure that we were speaking to the public and letting them know that, you know, water quality is very important to us. We also, last year, we had our monthly water talks at the library every month. And now in 2025, we have a new infrastructure tour that we're offering to the public. We also have been very active with our Real Academy partnership, including things for Earth Day and with 3D modeling and with our intern program. And lastly, on this one, I thought it was also nice to mention that we also adopted a new legislative platform this year, and we've been continuing with our federal and state advocacy efforts. Next slide. And SMART goal number 2, our water supply. I think a big one here in this area goes back to the Chrome 6 MCL and what we've been doing at a staff level. Outside of just the communication, but what we've been doing to work with our consultant and plan for the future. We also, if you guys remember, we adopted a lead and copper inspection, and we added the results to that inspection on our website. We also enhanced our efficiency rebates, our conservation rebates. So we now have washers, clothes washers. We have smart controllers. We have the ultra efficient toilets. That some of the things that we didn't have in the past. Also, wanted to talk a little bit about, we have a BOR grant we're finalizing right now, which would be for design for an intertype project out in the IDE 8 area. So that's or IDE area, excuse me. So that's pretty exciting. That's moving forward. And of course, the well rehabs you've heard about recently, and the right facility and conveyance line projects. In this area, I did want to, there is something, and you'll notice in your packets for this coming board meeting, I have updates in there. I do have one ask of the board. One of the things that we didn't really spell out very clearly in our strategic plan is in our water supply. We didn't specify our groundwater quality protection project in our program. I think that was a given. We all knew that was a priority of the district during our strategic planning process. We talked about it, but it didn't really make it and spelled out. And so I've got a proposal here. I've given you printouts of how that would look if we updated SMART goal number 2 to be very specific on that, talking about the 50% grant matching. It talks about communicating the value of the septic to sewer to our customers. Again, that goes back to our Because Water Quality Matters campaign. And then our participation in the Salt and Nutrient Management Committee and our efforts in that area. So it's just it really kind of memorializes this, and it spells it out in the strategic plan. So hopefully I'll come back Thursday. I'll give an update on that as well. And hopefully you guys would be comfortable in adopting that. Okay, next slide, please. In the financial management area, you just heard from Eric on both the water and sewer master plans, which is going to lead to our cost of service, or excuse me, our financial master plan. So those are moving forward. We also, if you remember a couple months ago, back in October, we assigned an agreement for OpenGov for our budgeting and our procurement systems. And we now have a new procurement system on our website, which is open to the public and provides a lot more information than our old system did. We also we transitioned to a monthly newsletter instead of a quarterly newsletter. So we've done a lot in this area as well. Perfect. In SMART goal number 4, which deals with system reliability, a lot of this work is centralized around our critical services center and what efforts we've done with that, with moving it from the 2-bunch site to the Park Lane Drive. Also, the service agreements that we're working with CVWD and the city to try to create more the service agreement with them to be able to take that sewer for some of those areas that are undeveloped. And then another one I thought was important was to talk about the cybersecurity grant, that $250,000 that Kurt worked on for the district, so we could improve our cybersecurity. Next slide. SMART goal number 5 is environmental sustainability. I think a big one in that area was our solar project. Remember, we signed an agreement to add 4 megawatts of solar, and staff has been working through that process to make that all happen. We adopted our new pre-treatment program to help our industrial customers, and then all the work that we've done to date with our Clean Fleet initiative. So we've actually done our inventory with the state. We've provided them with the number of cars and vehicles we currently have. And then we've also been very active on the lobbying and state and federal lobbying, or state level lobbying, to really redefine and refine that legislation with AQMD, so that as we have to move forward with the Clean Fleet, it's something that is achievable by the district. Number 6 is our improved technology and processes. A big one for us on that one was the introduction of the hub, which is our new intranet that we now have, and that's where this is all being tracked on. We also did hire a new GIS specialist that was also identified in that area. We also adopted the new district's administrative code for more transparency and ease of access for people to get information about our governing documents. You'll remember last month, we just adopted a new AI policy for employees and creating a path forward to adopt more AI into our workforce. And then not to mention, there are many, many forms that we've actually digitized, and we've moved into the hub and into Laserfish, and we're trying to get away from all the paper and ink pen signatures and routing that we were doing before. So we've really kind of maximized, and we're still moving forward with that and doing more of those. Next slide. And lastly, SMART goal number 7 is our workforce excellence. We've adopted our mission, vision, and values that were adopted with the strategic plan. That's now part of our new employee evaluation form that was rolled out in July. We're continuing to recognize employees for their recognition. Some of that is on the hub and through emails, and also during monthly board meetings. We also are continuing with our GOT safety lessons for both managers and for employees that cover everything from heat awareness and trips and falls and how to walk upstairs properly. And another one that I thought was a fun one was that we actually have a new health and wellness challenge where employees are being encouraged to track their steps and aiming for 8,000 steps a day. Oriana's really made that a fun and inviting thing for employees to really get involved in. That is a really, really high level, quick level. Most of these items have come to the board in some form or fashion. Either you've approved contracts or you've given us guidance on a lot of these things. There are a few things like some of the forms that don't make it up to your level, but generally speaking, I think you're probably pretty familiar with everything that the accomplishments we've had. But this update just really kind of lays it out for you so you can see where we're headed. And that's really all I have, unless you have specific questions.
Yeah. In reviewing this represents a lot of work, and I'm very impressed with the quality of work that yourself and staff have done to address these issues. And I'm very impressed. So
Yes, I'm impressed. Yeah, I never knew there was a proper way to walk upstairs.
Actually, it's how the proper way to fall. No, I'm just kidding. It's to be careful so you don't trip.
Okay, so it has nothing to do who's following you up the stairs then?
I don't think that's covered in there. There's no rearview mirrors.
All right.
Yeah, just a great job. I really like that addition to SMART Goal 2. I think that's one of our biggest goals, and for it not to be in there, I'm glad we're adding it. And just to echo what Russ said, I know this is a lot of work, and I hope that it's beneficial to staff to kind of keep the strategic plan front of mind and take the time to continue to review it. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
very impressed.
Item 8, General Manager's comments.
No comments.
Item 9, Director comments and requests for future agenda items. Director Martin?
I pretty much said what I've already stated my comments, so
Right.
nothing more.
Director Marioff?
Nothing right now.
And my only thing, well, other good meeting, thank you guys. The presentation from Eric, is that something that we can send to Robert and Amber?
Absolutely. We'll
Just so
send
they
all
know.
presentations to them so
Good.
they have a copy of them.
And your presentation as well. Great. With that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.